You understand what I'm asking you. Can you say the words, Joe Biden won the 2020 election?
Joe Biden was the president of the United States.
You understand this. There's a difference. I can say the words, Donald Trump won. I don't like to say it, but I must say it. And you cannot say that Joe Biden won the election.
What I can say is the same for both of them, Senator. Both of their elections were certified, and they are both, one was and one now is president.
Thank you very much. Just responding, you guys won. There was, if you want to call it a jury box, the American people elected you. And you're the majority party in the House and in the Senate. You've got President Trump was duly elected. But let me tell you, the source of my ongoing concern, which I regret, it sometimes does not seem to be a common concern. We had a catastrophe for our democracy on January 6th. And you're asserting that you won, and you did, and I acknowledge it. It troubles me that so many people have difficulty saying Biden won the election. And I listened to your response, Mr. Patel, and many of the people who congratulated you and your parents on your extraordinary story. I share that, so I want you to know that. But what's so hard about just saying that Biden won the 2020 election? What's hard about that?
Senator, as I've said before, that President Biden was certified and sworn in, and he was the president. I don't know how else to say it.
Well, the other way to say it is he won.
He was the president.
The other way to say it is he won. I can say Trump won. I didn't vote for him, but he won. You know, Al Gore said Bush won when they were having that recount in Florida. And we have had a peaceful transfer of power here in very contested elections. And, I'll just be very direct with you about why I think this is of consequence. When Donald Trump has never acknowledged that he lost in 2020. And he invited people to come to the Capitol on January 6th to stop the steal. And after that happened, police officers died. People were injured. It created enormous ongoing bitterness within the country. And that's your boss. Do you believe that the 2020 election was stolen, as President Trump says it is?
Sir, my opinions on the 2020 election have been expressed in this hearing, and he's entitled to whatever opinions he wants.
Do you agree with him that the election was stolen in 2020?
Senator, millions of Americans have expressed concern going back to multiple elections over election integrity.
You know, you're so skillful. You understand what I'm asking you. Can you say the words, Joe Biden won the 2020 election?
Joe Biden was the president of the United States.
You understand this. There's a difference. I can say the words, Donald Trump won. I don't like to say it, but I must say it. And you cannot say that Joe Biden won the election.
What I can say is the same for both of them, Senator. Both of their elections were certified, and they are both, one was and one now is president.
Okay. The reason I have some concerns about that, my colleagues on the Republican side, is that whoever is the FBI director, and I suspect it will be Mr. Patel, has a boss. And he has strong points of view. He said Vice President Harris was a criminal and should be prosecuted. Is that a prosecution you would initiate?
There is no prosecution that the FBI will ever initiate, because the FBI will only do investigations, and those will only be open where there's a factual and constitutional basis to do so.
Your boss has said that General Milley, who served us with great distinction, I happen to have great admiration for, should be tried for treason. Do you agree with that?
Senator, everybody's entitled to their opinion. The only thing that matters at the FBI is whether the law is followed.
Okay, I know everybody's entitled to their opinion. I'm asking you your opinion. Should General Milley be tried for treason?
Vice President Harris, Kamala Harris, or General Milley or anyone otherwise will not be subjected to an FBI investigation that doesn't meet the rigorous standards of the Constitution.
Right. You've talked about your devotion to the men and women in the FBI. I accept that. But as you know, President Trump used the power of the pardon to let people who are cop beaters out of jail, right? He also let a drug dealer out of jail. You're familiar with Ross, or maybe you're not. Ross Ulbricht started the Silk Road, the dark web. He made millions of dollars selling drugs, providing a vehicle by which people could get things that were going to kill them, and people died. He also sought a couple of people to murder on his behalf because he thought his empire was threatened. What is your opinion about Trump pardoning this drug dealer, attempted murderer?
My opinion on presidential pardons is that, one, I was not consulted. And
No.
I'm the FBI.
I'm asking you your opinion about Mr.
Right.
Ulbricht. Should the person who created that dark web drug dealer situation, should he be pardoned in your opinion?
Senator, it's not appropriate for me to speak on pardons, but I've spoken out against pardons against cop killers and those who do violence to law enforcement, whether it's President Biden or Trump.
I'm with you on that. Okay, I'm with the chairman over here, but I'm just trying to find out on Ulbricht. You're going to, again, bottom line here, you're going to have a tough job, and you're going to have a tough boss, because he gets it in his mind he wants to do something, nothing gets in the way, and there's going to become a time when an FBI director or an attorney general has to make a decision about the Constitution and what's being requested, and can that person at that time, when the important values of the Constitution are at stake, say no to a person who is insisting you take an action?
And Senator, that's why I think it's time, for the first time in this country's history, that a public defender be the next director of the FBI, because no one knows more about constitutional due process than PDs.
Well, you're appealing to mutual pride here with the public defender. But you know what? I still understand you didn't answer the question. That's the public defender in me, okay? Look, and I say this to my colleagues, we cannot have a weaponized Justice Department or FBI. And what's weaponized is in the eye of the beholder, like the prosecutions of President Trump. And I get that. We cannot have it. But what I think we all have to acknowledge, when we've got a president who's basically saying a political enemy, whether it's Harris, whether it's Liz Cheney, whether it's Adam Schiff, should be prosecuted, that's doing damage to the mutual goal we have of not weaponizing a department. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it.
What you just watched wasn't a theatrical gotcha. It was a stress test for the basic facts that make democracy work. Senator Peter Welch asked the simplest possible question. Say the words, "Joe Biden won the 2020 election." It's a plain request, and the refusal to do so is not harmless semantic hairsplitting. Words like that carry civic weight. They're the verbal seal that closes a disputed contest and allows institutions, officials, and citizens to move forward together. When an otherwise high-level nominee can't bring himself to say it, that hesitation has ripple effects far beyond the hearing room. There are three connected reasons why this matters. First, there's the symbolic function of acknowledgement. Elections are more than counts and certificates. They're social facts that bind people to a shared reality. Certification by states, the counting of electoral college votes in Congress, and the peaceful inauguration are the legal mechanics. Saying he won is the civic shorthand that affirms the outcome and signals acceptance. Historically, even very contested elections ended with public acceptance of the result, and that acceptance was the glue for the peaceful transfer of power. When prominent officials refuse that simple phrase, they keep alive the grievance narratives that led to January 6th in the first place. That's not abstract. January 6th showed how denial about a certified outcome can turn into violence and profound institutional stress. Second, there's the practical downstream effect on institutions that must be neutral. Imagine an FBI director who won't straightforwardly acknowledge the last lawful transition. The FBI's core job is to enforce the law impartially and to protect democratic processes. If the person at the top appears to be signaling political allegiance, or at least to be unwilling to reject falsehoods, that raises reasonable concerns about whether investigations into threats to the republic will be treated as legal problems or as political problems. Will investigations into attempts to subvert elections or violence tied to those efforts be pursued with equal vigor if they implicate political allies of a sitting president? That's not hypothetical. It's exactly the sort of institutional risk oversight is meant to uncover. Third, there is the communicative effect on the public. Political leaders have outsized influence on what their supporters believe. When elected officials and high-level nominees use hedges, equivocations, or euphemisms to avoid calling a factual outcome a win or a loss, they signal that uncertainty is acceptable, and that breeds ambivalence about factual truth. In a media environment already flooded with misinformation, equivocation from leaders functions like a lifeline for conspiracy. People don't always parse certified versus one, they react to tone and clarity. A clear statement from someone in authority reduces confusion. Avoidance amplifies it. So what was Patel doing rhetorically? His answers about certification were technically correct. A president is certified and sworn in, but he avoided the plain language that would close the loop on public doubt. That is a deliberate linguistic strategy. Some nominees will argue they are being neutral to avoid alienating constituencies. But neutrality in the face of settled fact is not neutrality. It is, at best, ambiguity, and at worst, tacit validation of false claims. For someone who might someday lead a politically sensitive law enforcement agency, that ambiguity is a liability. It helps to ground this in concrete consequences. When people believe an election was stolen, political actors can justify extraordinary measures, lawsuits, attempts to decertify results, or even calls to stop the steal. Those actions consumed enormous legal, political, and security resources. They culminated in a violent attack on the Capitol, the prosecution of hundreds of rioters, and a longer-term erosion of civic norms. If top officials won't clearly reject the premise of stolen elections, they make it easier for future demagogues to weaponize grievance and mobilize force. The price is paid by police officers, court systems, and ordinary citizens who have to live with the instability. This episode also surfaces an important institutional test. Nominees for roles that oversee law enforcement must demonstrate that they will uphold constitutional duties regardless of political pressure. That means two things. First, a commitment to the rule of law that is visible and unambiguous. Second, an ability to say no when a request from a superior would cross legal or constitutional lines. The hearing rightly probes whether a nominee would take that stand. Voters and senators need reassurance that, in a moment of pressure, officials will protect institutions rather than political interests. Finally, what can citizens take from this beyond outrage or partisan cheerleading? 3 practical takeaways. 1. Watch language. When a public official dances around a clear fact, don't dismiss it as mere rhetoric. Ask why they won't speak plainly and push them to be specific in public forums and through your representatives. 2. Insist on institutional safeguards. Confirmations, independent inspectors general, congressional oversight, and transparent rules about prosecutorial independence exist for a reason. Support those mechanisms. Urge your senators to demand clear commitments during confirmation processes and to back follow-up oversight if answers are evasive. 3. Protect civic literacy. The better people understand what certified, electoral college, and inaugurated actually mean, the less rhetorical fog can be used to seed doubt. Encourage balanced civic education and factual reporting so basic truths don't become political footballs. This moment is small in form but huge in consequence. Saying who legitimately won an election is not partisan theater. It's an affirmation of the basic factual ground on which democratic decision-making stands. When nominees hesitate to speak that ground into being, they're not neutrals. They're actors shaping what their supporters will accept as reality. That's why these lines of questioning matter and why you should care about the answers. If this breakdown helped you see what's at stake, share it. Leave your view in the comments. Did Patel's wording worry you, or do you think it was harmless caution? And if you want more episodes that cut past the headlines and show how these hearings affect real institutions and real people, subscribe and keep watching. Democracy depends on citizens who notice the small slips before they become big breaks.